Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Midwest Racks and Rods Outdoor Show. I am solo hosting tonight. I am Scott Piscabing, as you all know. Brother Drew could not make it tonight, unfortunately. This is 2 episodes in a row. Has he been replaced? Luke, has he been replaced? I don't. No, he hasn't been replaced. He's just got a busy schedule. Well, last time he was sick, and tonight he's working, so... I know he'd much rather be here with us, but hopefully we'll see him during the next episode. But before we get into our guests here, I just want to quick mention that this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Tagged and Bagged, which Luke is. Did I delete that? No. Is it not on there? That's okay. This episode is brought to you by Tagged and Bagged. Our good friends over there, they have all your needs for your pre-taxidermy birds. So make sure you go and check out taggedandbagged.net. All right, guys, I'm joined here today in studio. To my right, your left, here is Mike Hackett. And we have a surprise guest here tonight. We got Matt Hassel. Mike's wingman.
Yeah, his manager.
Mike's manager. So we got Mike and Matt here tonight, so which is great. I mean, Matt, I'm glad you made the trip up here too. It's great to have you on the show. I haven't seen you since Deerfest. It'll be coming on 2 years now.
2 years now,
because it was the last year was in West Bend, and that.
Yep.
We had a little bit of fun that night at the corner bar.
Yeah, a little bit.
And that.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Oh, bring the mic just a little bit. No? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Why don't you scoot your chair in just a little bit? I'm sorry.
Oh, scooch the chair. Oh, that's not scooch.
It's a heavier chair than one would think. There you go.
Good traction.
There we go.
All right.
Oh, thanks, Luke. I didn't even notice that.
Oh, I wasn't even on there.
Just barely.
Doing everybody a favor.
But yeah, we had a lot of fun that night.
That was a good time.
Were you there that year?
No.
Yeah, you weren't. Last time I saw you was last year for
up at the
open
Dells.
season. Yeah,
Yep.
the Dells.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got me good and drunk. You got everybody good and drunk.
The whole entire bar. I ran
Yeah.
a bar tab for everybody in there from the time we walked in until the time we closed it.
It was
the locals, everybody.
It was nuts. I can't remember the name of the bar. And we probably shouldn't mention it because it is local to this area here. But if you know of a bar somewhere between West Bend and Jackson that smells like urinal cakes, that would be the one.
Yeah.
Like an overpowering smell. Like, it's just like, did you throw urinal cakes up in the ventilation system?
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
It actually went away, probably about a year ago, and now I re-smell it because of this
Because of
conversation.
that, right? You can finally.
Is that crazy? One of them smells, it just comes back.
Yeah, exactly. And it does go away after X amount of beers and cocktails and shots and stuff. You start to become immune to it, or your nose just.
That was a wild time.
But yeah, so Mike, like I said, we talked last year at open season, and that about having you on. Sam kind of was like, "Oh, you got to have Mike on. You got to have Mike on."
Yep.
And we talked about that, and here we are.
Here we are.
2 weeks away from open season. So at least we got it done within a year of the last show. But we've gone through a lot of changes here on our end, moving studios and stuff. And, life gets in the way sometimes. And
It sure does.
And that. But so for those of you who don't know Mike, Mike's a big buck killer. And if you've seen any of the comments on any of our posts here, it's kind of a resounding,
Yep.
Yeah, Mike kills big bucks.
I've got a few.
Have Mike on. Mike kills big bucks.
He does.
So, Mike, tell us a little bit about your back history here, like your start in the outdoors. Did you start out 5 years old, 10 years, 12? I mean, our age, it was 12, right?
Yep.
Us 40s and 50-year-olds. You had to be 12 years old, probably even for you. I think it was probably 12. I mean, it's only been in the last decade maybe or so that they changed it.
How old do you think I am?
Well, I'm
You
just
said
saying,
40, and I'm 40.
You're 40?
Yeah.
You don't look a day past 39.
I'm grayer than you.
I don't know about all that. But
No, I had to do all the classes at the fire department in Moreau down there every single week for however long they had them back then. Now you just go online and you do a one day dealio and you're good to go. But
the field day and all that stuff.
Yep. We it was quite a course back then.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to miss a single class.
Nope, and there was actually kids that failed.
Yep.
Now I don't.
Yeah.
I took my son, my daughter, everything. I don't think any kid failed. I took my wife, and there was a 5-year-old down in Chicago that actually passed, and actually had to actually take the test and passed.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, some kids have it at that age.
That's true. That's some of them do. That's for sure. I guarantee my 5-year-old isn't ready for it yet. No. I mean, he thinks he's ready. He's excited to go out. He just got his first gun this last weekend, 22 long rifle. He's all excited about. I'm like, this, he's like, so when can I shoot it? Like 7, 8? I'm like, yeah, not now. But pretty soon. We'll see where you're at in another year or two. But so that whole hunter education thing, that's changed so much. And I loved it. I loved doing it. Like I thought it was really cool. The field day.
Oh yeah.
And we were out there crossing fences and get to shoot a little bit and stuff. I thought it was pretty cool.
Right. I think it was awesome. I think during COVID, they did away with even the field day. Yeah. I had some cousins that just they had to hurry up and get it done, and because they didn't have to do anything but a little online exam.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea.
No, I mean, honestly, the things that those things still stick in my head, crossing a fence line or something like that with a buddy handing them the gun. And I think it's super important, but not to go off on a big long tangent about hunter education. So,
right.
So you got your start basically around the same time.
12 years old.
12 years old.
12 years old is when I had to wait to go. And I actually, the first year I hunted my stepdad opening weekend.
Okay.
He was a kind of a big influence when I used to go out and sit at the base of his tree bow hunting, from the time I was, 7 years old, 6 years old, sit at the base of the tree, follow him up and down the hills over in Lafarge and stuff like that in public hunting grounds. And started out doing that. And then my first year when I was 12, I didn't get to put a bullet in my gun. I just had to walk around with the gun, make sure I was safe with the gun, actually pull up on deer without a bullet in and stuff like that.
That's a really good idea.
So it was just, he was big on, safety and everything else. So, so that was the first year, and I never shot anything the first year. And then my second year, I went with my real dad and my grandpa, and we went over by Bosqueville in the hills over there and did some deer drives, and we had a bad incident with a dog and stuff like that. Cut that weekend short, and we ended up hunting around home, and I think I shot a 4-corn my second year hunting. So I started out like everybody else shooting these for about the first 15 years.
Well, not everyone.
Well,
I kind of peaked a little early. my first buck ever, I mean, it wasn't anything huge or whatever, but, you're talking like 1989 and hunting in Necedah. It was like 120. I've never measured it, but it was 120 some inch 8-pointer. It was bigger than any buck my dad had gotten or anything like that. And I kind of like didn't even know like what I had actually shot.
Right.
You know, I mean, I did and I didn't until my dad was like, "Oh my God." He's like, "You know what you just killed?" He's like, "That's amazing." And
yeah, that's awesome.
He's like, "We haven't shot a buck like that around here in years." I mean, back then it was, you would apply for your doe tags in July
had the sticker
and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you would see does and stuff like that all the time, and it'd be like Hunter's Choice is what it was.
Yep.
You know, to apply for Hunter's Choice. But yeah, those were different times for sure in terms of like the deer herd and that. And it's always kind of confusing me when you hear people talk about like, oh, the deer numbers are down. Deer numbers are down. I'm like, not compared to what it was. And like, oh, in the 80s, it was so good. I'm like, I don't know. My recollection of the 80s wasn't that great.
No.
You know, I mean, and we're talking Necedah, we're talking central farmland zone basically is what, you know, in terms of what the state is broken up now into the different zones, which is like now, it's the population.
Yeah.
I mean, now they're giving away, you get your doe tag, you get your, or you get your buck tag for archery, you get your buck tag for gun, and they're throwing in eight doe tags, right? You know, right out the gate.
Yeah.
You know, you and a guy hunt one piece of property, you're talking nearly 20 deer. You
right,
know,
that you got tags for.
That you get for between two guys. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
So, I mean, I don't know. And not to go off on deer numbers and stuff, but.
Yeah, no, it's changed a lot. I mean, I used to be happy to see one,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when I was younger growing up and stuff like that. If I seen 1, 2, I was like ecstatic, you know, every sit. You know, now it's, you know, you're seeing 15 a sit.
Right.
You know, it's just a different.
And you wonder if it's, you know, what is it, the deer numbers, or is it just like our passion to drive harder to, you know, to be great at it? I always often wonder, like, was it that crappy, or did I not care as much as I do now? Or
you're just not as good of a hunter as maybe you are now.
Yeah, am I evolved into, you know?
I think it's probably a combination of both for sure.
You know, it has to be, you know.
I mean, what did we have for education back in those days? You know, you rented some those original Drury Outdoors VHSs from your local video store.
TK and Mike.
Yep. You had some magazines, you know, North American Whitetail, I think they were around back then, right? You had
Outdoor Life.
But yeah, and then some books, you know, I used to scour the library, like constantly. You know, I read all Leonard Leroux, all of his books and stuff, Way of the Whitetail and things, and then later on some of Charlie Alsheimer's stuff, and it was like books. I mean, I got books all over the place on the shelves and stuff. Because that's what it was, and magazines, you know. Now, I mean, with social media and just the internet in general, the information that's getting pumped out there.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, you can learn so much in a short period of time and really kind of jump ahead in some cases to a level that took some guys many years.
Right.
Now, I will say that I think there's something to be said about the time spent out there. You know, you can learn all this stuff, but when you're out there and identifying sign and things like that, you know, I think that's far more important than just getting the knowledge. It's like you can get the knowledge, but how do you translate that, or how does that turn into what you're going to do out in the field?
Oh yeah, for sure.
But all right, I digress. In what area were you hunting at this time?
Well, when I was with my stepdad, we were over in all the public hunting grounds over by Lafarge and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it seems like every day, opening day, he'd shoot a 10-pointer that was about like this on public land.
Sure.
Then when I was hunting with my grandpa and my dad, we were over to Boscoville and stuff like that. And my grandpa over there was shooting, you know, they thought every deer over there was the size of a bushel basket.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they had racks laying around that were just, you know, 160s, just all over the place. Just throw them in a pile, you know. But that's what they grew up doing and living and stuff like that. So I started hunting over there, and then
was that public, or was that?
That was all private for the most part,
like
family farms and stuff like that.
Okay,
Yep. And then once we kind of had the dog incident over there, which is kind of a long story that ain't not worth really talking about, but it's, we started hunting around home in Rock County. My grandpa had a guy that we worked with, or that he worked with at GM, and he had 180 acres down in a swamp, ridge and swamp and stuff like that. So, which had some public around it. But we started hunting down there, and it was good hunting. I mean, great hunt. I actually live in the section now that I originally started hunting, and I shot my first deer and stuff like that. I bought land in that section, so it turned out cool. And I still hunt in that section and stuff like that too, right across the street from my house. So So yeah, a lot of
history there.
A lot of history there. I mean, I've hunted there I've scoured I got back tags down in that swamp from crawling through the tag holders, and you get out and it's like, oh, yep, another one gone. Yeah. So there's definitely proof that I've been in that swamp somewhere if you can find it.
Oh yeah.
So what was your style? Like, how quickly did you get into archery? Was that like right from jump street?
Away.
Yeah.
Right away. We used to hunt over by Yellowstone a lot, over in Lafayette County and stuff. And I don't know how many big bucks I've missed. And, I was not good my first few years at all.
What was your first bow?
It was a Proline.
Okay.
Proline Force 2, I think.
You still have it?
No.
Do you wish you did?
I wish I did, because it was black. It wasn't no camouflage thing. It was just a black.
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
And then the bow that I actually started shooting deer with, I bought from a guy that I worked with, and it had a round sight on it, and it was probably one of the first ones that actually had the adjustment on it.
Sure.
And it actually had a thing on the front to where you could pull the trigger to raise it up or down.
Oh, okay.
So you didn't have to go to the side and turn a dial and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, it was so hard to go one way or another, to where basically you just pulled it back. You weren't going back the other way because your finger just didn't have the power to push it forward.
Yeah.
But just with that scope, with the one dot in the middle, changed, and that's what I shoot now still. It's just the scope like deal with one dot in the middle.
Yeah.
And it just changed. I started shooting deer.
Just doing a single pin.
A single pin, and that just changed everything. I don't know if I was just getting confused by pins, just get too jacked up to where I wasn't picking pins. I wasn't,
floating in between them and that. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I kind of went back and forth for quite a few years, constantly changing in that, shooting 3D archery league and that. And like, oh yeah, single pin, that was for sure the way you wanted to go, was shooting 3D archery league. But then I found like it with hunting, I didn't like I got like panic and constantly wanting to change, or like having another step in the process instead of just knowing your pins. And, but eventually I just settled in, finally going single pin and finding that comfort of like, okay, I can adjust the dial and get it dialed in using those, an HHA optimizer and stuff, and now there's other ones and stuff out there as well too. Yeah. What about you?
Same. I shoot single pin. Yeah. I had same deal. Problems with multiple pins early on. And then I've been on a single pin for probably a long time, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. It's usually, you got a 20-yard pin and you're dialed in at 25 and in, and let's be real, probably 95% of the deer I shoot are within 25 yards anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't remember a deer that I had to, I guess in the last at least 5 years, that I had to dial out to over 30 and want to shoot it,
Right.
I have big hopes that I have that option, in case one hangs up or, busts out or something. But
what's the longest you've ever taken a deer of any sort?
With archery?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I probably 30, 35 yards.
Yeah.
I've never shot one over
54.
55 for me.
Yep.
Yeah. And I wouldn't do it today. I wouldn't do it again.
I think I would, just because the bow I have now compared to what I was shooting then.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I had when the Matthews Monster came out, the XLR8 with the 5-inch brace sight, the thing was just a screaming, hyper, non-forgiving, you were either on or you weren't. That was one of those things. And it, I felt comfortable shooting that. But now I mean, I got that phase 4 now, and that thing is just so smooth, and I'm way more confident in that, even though it might even be slower than what the Monster was, or right in that area, but it's just such a more of a forgiving bow. I mean, so I feel more comfortable shooting now a longer range than I ever have.
I definitely, as time has gone on and my eyesight isn't as good and that, like, I definitely want to bring him in closer, but my confidence level, 20 years ago was just, off the charts. In that I felt like if I drew back on something, I'm gonna, so in that 55, that was with a Matthews Featherlight.
So not a smoking, screaming bow by no means.
No. And then I had the Ultramax after that. So that was solo cam and that, but I felt like my confidence was so high, and then, because at that point I hadn't missed deer and stuff. As time goes on and you miss or you make a bad shot, then all of a sudden everything changes, and I'll notice even to this day when I'm in the stand, I'm already thinking before the deer comes in, before I even see a deer, I'm looking at spots and I'm like, just kind of replaying. If this is kind of an area where I've been before, I'm just thinking about all those bad, and which is a terrible, terrible habit. You got to try to put that behind you. But it's so hard to do. If you've lost one or you made a bad shot or you missed one or whatever it is, like that, to me at least, it just sticks with me. I remember that more than the kills.
For sure. For
sure.
I lost all confidence for quite a few years. I shot with my Monster, a mechanical broadhead. I lost 170-inch deer, and so I lost confidence in that bow because I thought it was, I'd seen there was lung blood down the side of the deer, everything else. I thought it was a good shot. It was a fairly close shot, but came in high, and, it was one of those things, but I didn't blow through the deer. And I've always, and pre me shooting a bunch of mature deer, I never had an arrow stick in a deer. I've always shot through their shoulders. Mm-hmm. When you're shooting 2.5-year-old deer, you can blow through their shoulders. Well, you start getting into the mature deer, you got to lay off the shoulders because there's a lot of bone there. Yeah. And I lost confidence in that bow. And then 2 years later, I ended up falling and having to switch to a crossbow. I shot that for a few years, and this last year was my first year back to compound again. So
that I'm glad you brought that up. So how many years did you have to shoot the crossbow?
5. I went back 2 years ago. I shot a doe on film. It was a beautiful shot. She just did all kinds of crazy stuff. And it was like, all right, I'm back, I can, and I was at work 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, and I was talking to my brother on the phone. I was walking down this hill and it was icy, and both my feet went out from underneath me. When I went to grab myself, I put both arms behind me and then slid down the hill, and both my arms popped backwards. Couldn't get my bow back again. Yeah. So
rotators
both of them, and they heal, but I got to lay off them.
Yeah.
So then I ended up shooting 2 years ago. I ended up shooting one with the crossbow again, which, it is what it is. It gets me out there and stuff like that. But 100%. Then when I got this phase 4, everything's just so smooth about it, and it's easy on the shoulders, pulling back and stuff like that. So knock on wood, I won't, that crossbow can sit in the garage for the next 15 years for all I care.
Yeah. I get it. 'Cause I'm 5 years in shooting a crossbow now. I was in a bad snowmobile accident, 50 miles an hour straight into a tree and I went over, and my head went this side around the tree, and my shoulder and everything. I sheared off the top of my shoulder, broke my arm, tore the labrum, collarbone. Everything was just, I've got so many anchors and screws and stuff in there. So everything is fixed and repaired. But what had happened is there was also dislocation, obviously, too. My shoulder's just hanging there. How long it took me to get to the emergency room off the trails and stuff, the axillary nerve pulled so tight that it ended up severing. So that axillary nerve is what sends the signal from my arm to my brain and back and forth or whatever to hold my arm up, and that's gone. And that was by far, like, I don't care. Like, I haven't snowmobiled since. My sled was totaled. We sold my wife's and our spare sled and that. And like, shortly thereafter, we got pregnant with our first kid and stuff, and like, whatever. I don't care. But the devastating part, the whole thing was like, archery.
Right.
And so I had to go to crossbow, and I'm doing different strength exercises, trying to like, so I can compensate. So I can hold this out here, but I put anything in it and my arm just goes down. So I've actually been talking with Brad a lot in that, trying to maybe get into shooting a longbow or trad, because you're coming up and and learning that, because I just miss it. Yeah. I miss shooting a bow so much. And like you said, crossbow got you out there, kept you doing it. But there's also limitations that I think some people who have never actually hunted with a crossbow, and I believe you were shooting a Raven. I think I remember, right?
I shot, my first one I shot was the TAC Elite, that PSE TAC Elite.
I don't even know if I'm not familiar with that one.
It's on an AR platform.
Okay.
It was one of the first ones to shoot like 410 feet a second or something like that. Which ain't big now, but back when it first came out. But the thing was long, heavy, but it was a tack driver. It was a 100-yard, crossbow.
Did you feel confident that you could kill deer at 100 yards though?
No.
You wouldn't.
No. I actually missed deer with that crossbow. My son shot it for quite a few years. When he first started hunting, he was shooting that and missed a pile of deer with that crossbow. And at 20 yards, like big deer, he was missing. Just you get jacked up and you're a kid, but so it ain't like you can just throw a crossbow in anybody's hand. They're just going to go out and kill everything in the woods. There's still a lot to it. It's not. Otherwise, every single person that goes out with a rifle is going to kill every single deer that walks by, and that's just not the case.
No, and what I felt is the first off, like the difference of carrying that out in the woods versus a bow. The weight difference.
Yeah.
And now,
crossbows they're awkward.
They are awkward in that, and in so many cases, like, yes, there's definitely advantages, but and I don't care really what the arguments. I think the whole argument thing is kind of silly. I will say that at one point in time, I was kind of a little bit anti crossbow myself. Never vocal about it, but in my head, I'm like, well, it is harder to do with a bow, and I still believe that to be the case. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that it is as easy as everybody thinks it is.
No.
I think it has its limitations. I think, like, if you don't have a rest or something like that, so if you're just hunting out of a hang-on, if you're going out on public and that, now you're free shooting, that deer better be within 20.
And it's like shooting a monster.
Yeah.
They are they're so fast and short and everything. They're unforgiving. So that little twitch that that you can get by with, maybe with shooting a regular bow or something like that, that little tiny twitch throws that crossbow bolt off. It's considerable.
It is.
You can tell when you're target practicing and stuff like that, even if you got a bipod out and stuff like that, you twitch a little bit or jerk that trigger or something like that, it throws them arrows off a long way.
I agree 100% with you. I think one of the biggest disservices that Raven has done to the crossbow industry is that whole kind of tagline or whatever, accurate out to 100 yards, or kind of pushing that. So then guys get that in their head. They're like, well, that's ridiculous. There's guys shooting new compounds at 100 yards.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very efficiently.
Very efficiently.
I'll shoot 100 yards. I'll practice it all day long.
But I think it was like such a bad idea to like market it that way, because that's what guys don't like. It's like, cross gun or whatever.
Right.
Now, granted, in our situations, like we were regular bow hunters.
Yeah.
And I even feel bad saying it like that, but we were regular bow hunters, and then we were forced to because of injuries. And so obviously we would have fallen, and I currently do fall in that category where if crossbows were only legal for people with disabled or an injury or whatever, we would obviously fall in it. It's not like we're just getting into it. But I think it can be beneficial to get people out there.
It does. And as far as I'm concerned, we're not, unless we're like Brad, none of us are really true bow hunters. I mean, true archery, I mean, I watch that stuff all the time just because like I wish I could shoot like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to be able to shoot like that and shoot traditional like that. I just don't think I could.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I've never really done it a lot or anything like that, but other than gym class, back in 1991 and stuff like that.
We started out that way, right?
Oh yeah, flinging arrows and seeing how many you could shoot out into the farmer's field and stuff like that when the teacher wasn't looking.
Yeah, that's what we started. In fact, I still have that bow. Yeah, it's forest green in that. I wouldn't dare try drawing it back because it's still got that same string from 30 some odd years ago. But well over 30 years ago. But yeah, again, I don't want to get into the whole crossbow thing, but it's just I think I wanted to get your perspective on that, anyways. Having gone both ways, that you can at least have appreciation for the fact that it's not. It's not what it's all cracked up to be, that it's just like this slam dunk thing. You're going out there.
Right. And that's what, you're going to shoot them, whether you got a regular bow, a compound, a recurve, a crossbow, whatever, whatever gets you out there. And, you're not going to, nobody else is in there shooting your deer for you and you're not shooting their deer. And I don't know. I just never got into I always get mad when people go on about it. And even though I'm back with, the regular compound and stuff like that, I would never ever bash anybody for shooting a crossbow because it's just one of those things. It's a personal choice. It's evolution.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's just like everybody in Wisconsin shooting rifles right now when it was shotgun.
When it used to be shotgun.
I mean, it's the same difference, and you don't hear anybody complaining about it because everybody wants to carry their AR-22 or whatever Matt carries around, stuff like that.
It's a nice gun.
I doubt it's an AR-22.
No, it's a ADM AR-10.
Okay, I was going to say it's probably an AR-10.
I got a dead air suppressor on it and really, really nice vortex.
How dare you?
I know.
How dare you?
I know. I wanted
when I killed my first deer, it was with a 20 gauge.
Hey, so did I.
Injection.
Bird barrel.
Yeah.
4 times.
I shot it right between the eyes.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Really? For the final one? After
that
it
was
down
the
to one
shot.
leg?
It was coming in straight at me, and it had its head down because there was 4 does that were on this trail. So I told my dad, I said, we came back from breakfast. I said, I'm going to go down where those does were, and that and facing right down the trail, like I'm on the trail. And sure enough, here comes this buck, and his head is down in that. And I put it up, and I didn't even have a shot at his chest. I'm like, whatever, I'm shooting it right in the face. Shot it right between the eyes. That thing dropped in his tracks, and it was party time after that.
That'll do it.
I would never do that ever again. I'm like, this is going to kill it.
Oh, right. Well, that was that old deer drive mentality.
Right.
I mean, back then it was like when you saw a deer, you drive a deer, it was pretty savage.
It was.
It was whatever you had to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah.
But, I guess back to the point or whatever, like you said, like the changes. And this kind of crosses even into fishing in that, so like now, one of the big things, live scope, everybody's talking about live scope. At what point is technology too much? And I think the crossbows are getting more.
We talk about this a lot lately.
Do you? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, the whole thermal drones.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to get too crazy with that.
Well, I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, I have been along for the ride on a couple of them for recovery. And I could I think for the recovery end of it, I think I'll, as long as it's legal or I can get away with it, I don't know if I'll ever track a deer that's even remotely questionable ever again, because I think it's the safest and most efficient way to track a deer. Hands down, until you see one work, it's unbelievable. Like, you watch all the YouTube and TikTok videos, but until you're there, it's like, oh my God. But with that same sense, it's like, I could see that you put this thing in the wrong hands. I mean, from my deck of my house, I could fly over the entire public hunting ground and drop a GPS location on every single big buck.
And you could fly it high enough that nobody would probably even know, right?
Nobody would know. And that's from the deck of my house. Like, I don't own one, but I watched it now, and I'm like, we could sit on my deck. We take the, Sam's drone, and we've flown it from my house all the way over to my Topol farm. It's like 3 miles away.
That's crazy.
And that's not a thermal or nothing. It's just a Phantom 4 or whatever. We fly it over there and go over top my food plots and the hay fields, and we fly it back. And it's a long ways away. Yeah. And these thermal drones they're insane.
Unbelievable.
They are unbelievable. Yeah. And I could see, like, you get some guy, it's like everybody, wants to shoot a raven at 100 yards because that's going to up your chances if you can kill one at 100 yards. Well, you get, Joe Smo that's, wants to spend $13,500 on a thermal drone and just go up quick and scope out everything, even his own land or public. He could literally put a GPS location, and it is
and then
that
and get
fast.
the stock on.
Yeah, it is literally right to Onyx, like right now. Like, here's your pin, boom. And there's no, until you see it, there's no question about it. So that thing is like, I could see how it could go both ways. I think it's a great tool, but I don't know how would you regulate it?
Well, that's the thing is, how can you, like, okay, that's great for recovery and that, but how do you separate that from people using it for scouting? Because that's the issue, right? Is that they don't want people using it, to scout the deer and stuff. I mean, like you said, and then you can fly it up how high?
400 feet.
And you would never,
No, it doesn't scare the deer.
Right.
No, we've flown low with that Phantom 4, and you can blow deer off the field.
Sure.
But when you're up with a thermal, the zoom at 400 zoom, and then it's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible.
What are your thoughts on it?
They're crazy.
Yeah.
They absolutely, I've seen them in action, and they definitely could be a game changer for every single, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of the big names out there actually probably use them as far as scouting. If they got the money to do, most of these guys got the money to do it, and you could find out where every particular buck you want to hunt, you can find out exactly where he's bedding every single day, 2 months up to your hunt.
Within, you could find every deer in your property in 2 minutes and drop pins like this without a question.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking like, there's probably a deer. You could,
as far as recovery goes,
mouse.
it is hands down the best thing. Dogs are great. My cousin's got a dog. We found my buck with a dog and stuff like that. Dogs are awesome. But when you start crossing, property lines and having to get a hold of this person because it went in here, and, everybody owns 5 acres nowadays, where it's just one of those things. You got to go through so many hoops to where you can go up there. It's like, all right, he's dead in this property. This is the person we need to talk to.
We don't have to. Yeah, we don't have to run dogs through this property, and this property.
Zero invasive,
right? And I think more landowners would be more apt to, instead of say, hey, can we run a dog through your property, or can we fly up above your property with this drone, see if the deer's in there? Yeah. We can show you the deer right here on the video screen. You can come with us. We'll walk right to it. And
that's, we won't say where, why, or when, but that happened to us this year.
Yes.
Or last year.
Yeah.
Where we knew we weren't going to get access, but we were like, here, he's in his bed, Yeah. And he's like, whoa, take my hand, let's go.
Yeah.
So, and that was different. So,
sure.
But
yeah, and that's the thing too, is after those deer are dead, that body stays warm for a long time.
Oh,
a significant amount. It's not you got to get this done within a 6-hour window.
Right.
And you have time to to get a guy there and do it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that is probably the biggest thing, so there's all this talk about like trail cameras being kind of banned in different states or cell cams especially.
Yeah, cell cams.
Like at what point is technology superseding the sportsman's aspect of it, of like woodsmanship and things in fair chase.
Oh, yeah,
ultimately.
Putting in your time. Yeah, I get that.
Like I think the fair chase is probably the most important part of that. And it's crazy. I mean, even I thought like a few years ago when they started with the rangefinder Garmin's and stuff on the bows, I was like, whoa, what are we getting into here? Like this is getting a little crazy.
Yeah. Right.
And I mean, that was just a couple of years ago. Where are we going to be in 10 years from now?
Shooting them from your couch.
Right? With a robot or,
right.
like.
Yeah, your drone.
With your drone. I mean, so I get where guys are apprehensive about certain things, even with the crossbow thing, because it's like because look at where the crossbows have come in just like the last 5 to 10 years. From what you said, like a big cumbersome, big 10-point, and now 10 points they've got ones that are competing with Ravens and stuff now. And where do we draw the line? At what point do we say enough is enough? This is not a fair chase situation anymore. Right. I don't know. And
yeah,
I don't think the DNR cares if it's a fair chase as long as the deer get shot. And as far as that goes, it's just one of those things. And everybody's about what's the most efficient way to do it. And for me, if it comes down to me taking my 10-year-old or my 12-year-old out with a crossbow, or taking them out and having them flinging arrows all over the woods like I was when I was that age, for me, the biggest thing is a totally different, I was on public land shooting every single at every single buck that walked by.
Yeah.
Now I have a son that goes out with me and stuff like that, and we're shooting at mature deer, So to start, I'd much rather have him shooting at it with a crossbow. Is he going to put the time in to shoot at it with a regular bow? No. He loves gun hunting and stuff like that. So it's one of those things. It's like if he's going to be out there with archery equipment, I would rather have him with that because he's more efficient. Not that he's ever shot a deer with one, but he's more efficient on the target with it, you know? So I don't know.
And I agree with you, but I guess, playing devil's advocate, that's where I think you get the individuals that are like, well, that's not the way I did it. And, it's too easy now for the kids or just anybody getting into hunting. Like say somebody in 30 years old, all of a sudden now wants to get into hunting. There's definitely advantages and they can kill deer, bigger deer. I mean, for example, my buddy Mike, he didn't get into it till his late 20s and that. And he leases a couple properties with me. And so he didn't have to deal with all the struggles I dealt with for all the years that, prior to that. And he started killing some nice bucks.
Right.
It didn't take him, as long as it took me.
Right.
But the technology was different. The information was different. He had somebody showing him,
oh yeah, with
a lot of knowledge and stuff. Now you throw in all the new technology that people have. I think it's one of those things where I think where we're going to have to kind of deal with it because things aren't going to probably go away.
No, they're not going to go away.
At some point there might be a line drawn in the sand, but I don't think things are going to go away. I also think that it's important to remember that we do not have the numbers of hunters that we once did. Contrary to popular belief with some people out there where they're like, the hunter, no, we don't. The boomers are dying off. Right. The boomers are getting out of hunting. Our generation, us 40-somethings or whatever, we're in that generation right now where we got, the siblings and that our parents were having a bunch of kids yet too.
Right.
Still a decent amount. You look at schools, right now, and that they want to combine schools because enrollment is so low because, frankly, people aren't having kids.
Right.
And the numbers that they used to. You know, it's like, for me, I got one kid.
Right.
You know, I didn't have my kid until I was 41 years old.
Right.
And I'm a one and done. Snip this last year.
Yeah, I got two, same thing.
So, you know, the fact is that we don't have, and the proof is in the pudding when you look at license sales.
Oh, yeah.
And that could be for a variety of, you know, you're going to get some people that are going to be like, well, that's because there's not the deer numbers. No, like our group of guys that we had a group, nearly 15 guys, and we were hunting like 200 acres of properties in the lease. We're down to like 6 of us now, between multiple guys passing away, just kind of done because they're getting too old. It's getting too hard and that. And that's just been within like less than 10 years that we've shrunk by 2/3 in just our group. So I think it's really important that we get the kids and stuff like that out there. Yeah, get our sons and daughters. And if you don't have a kid, you know, get part of some of these organizations, because honestly, that is the next generation. Like guys will be like, well, I'm going to plant these oak trees on the property for what generation? Right. If you don't have the kids to grow up and do it, or your grandkids, they're never going to climb that oak tree.
Right. Yeah. That's me. That's my mentality.
You know?
Yeah. I got a whole pile of them coming again.
Exactly. So I know we kind of went off on a rant there a little bit. We're going to get back into it here with Mike, and we're going to start talking about some of Mike's big buck kills here.
Yeah, let's talk about Mike's big bucks. That's what I like.
But before we do that, our producer Luke said we're about at the 45-minute mark here, so I think we're going to take a brief intermission, but then we're going to get back. So guys, stick around, refresh your cocktail, mix a new one. It's Thirsty Thursday. Crack some more beers, get them out, some fridge bricks, and let's get back after it here after this brief intermission, and let's talk about some of Mike's big buck kills. back. Thanks for sticking around, those of you that have, and those of you that haven't. Hopefully you guys will check us out later on. Or maybe you're just watching the State of the Union address, and that sounds like a really fun time, doesn't it? I think you'd much rather be here with us talking about killing bucks and stuff, although we haven't really talked so much about that, but that's what we're going to get into right now, because we went off on some tangents, as we often do on the show, and that's just kind of the way the conversations sometimes go. But, Mike, let's get back to you. Where did we leave off? You're flinging arrows as a kid, shooting anything and everything, and just flinging them like...
Yep, and I did that
Joe, son of a bitch out there, huh?
I did that for up till about probably 2012.
Yeah.
So, probably 20 years worth of me just basically... I mean, I shot a lot of deer. Once I got it down and shot my first deer with the bow, I shot a lot of deer, and it was the first buck that walked in. It was, during earn a buck years, it was every single buck that walked in, and that's, we ate a ton of deer. It was great because my grandpa was still alive. I'd shoot a deer, I'd take it to his place, I'd drop it off, I'd come back and eat it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to do any of the work or anything like that. It was just, my job was just to shoot deer, and I was great.
And you were great at that job.
I was great at that job with my bow. I mean, you could put a target out there at 20 yards, I'm all over the place. I cannot target shoot at all. I am absolutely terrible. I have a hard time sighting in a bow. Still to this day, I get target panic and stuff like that. So it takes me a while to actually sight in my bow. It's kind of all right, I felt good on this shot. I know I pulled this shot, and it just got to where a deer's in front of me, it's dead. But targets is just not my thing, and I've never been that way.
How do you think that translates between, one to the other?
I don't know. I have no idea. My mind, when I'm at a target, I draw back and I settle down on the target from the top down. And as I'm settling down, if it takes me too long to get down onto that target, my mind tells my trigger, my finger, it's time.
So are you a snap?
I've always been like that. I've always dropped into my shot, and as I was coming through, I touch it off. Yeah. And
touch it off or snap it off? Like, are you a
I'm a slapper.
Slapper?
I'm a slapper. I've always been like that. Ever since I started with the release, I started out with the tab, and obviously I wasn't much slapping with that. But once I got the release, it seemed like I was always you're there, slap it. It ain't hold, and gently squeeze, surprise you when it goes off.
Yeah,
I know when it's going to go off because my triggers are, my fingers all over the place. So
yeah.
But yeah, I shot a lot of small deer. I have a whole garage full of year and a half old deer. I mean, a whole garage full of them. And it just got to where eventually, I wanted something more. I mean, my brother's first deer was a 145-inch 12-pointer.
Nice.
Didn't even know there was deer like that around, really. This is pre-trail camera and everything else, and it's like, I've never even seen anything like that.
Yeah.
And so, he shoots his giant deer like that, and he had a great area, which is a mile from where I'm actually hunting now in northern Illinois. And he had great area and waited for big deer. He's never been one to shoot small deer, and I was always...
Is this an older brother or younger brother? Younger, okay.
Yep, younger brother. So yeah, I finally got to where it's like, all right, trail cameras, stuff like that. Finally started getting pictures of big deer. It's like, all right, maybe I can see what's behind this 1.5-year-old deer. Maybe I can let this 1.5-year-old deer go.
Yeah.
Maybe I do have some of these big deer that are actually going to walk by me in daylight,
Mm-hmm.
And I started leasing ground, and once I started leasing ground, obviously started getting some bigger deer, over in Richland County and stuff like that. And the first deer I actually shot, it was a Boone and Crockett, first Boone and Crockett deer on a lease. And it was just one of those things that I just shot something like that, and I just had no idea what that was going to do to me as far as.
And was that with archery?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
A game changer, right? Like
it
just changed, like it turned that switch.
It turned the switch, and now it's like, that one was 180. Then, I shot a few that were, smaller the few years after that, but they were all, 140 and above. And then in 17, I shot a 193 and a 178, and both the same year, one with the muzzleloader and one with the bow. Yeah. So,
do you want to pull up some of those pictures? We got a few.
Yeah,
and
that's the muzzleloader one.
Yeah. And what was that one?
That was 178.
That's an incredible buck.
That's a hammer for sure.
I mean, most guys will never even see a buck like that.
Yeah.
Hunting.
Yeah. That was. I got to hunt that deer, basically one day. The seasons in Illinois, that was Northern Illinois deer. Seasons in Illinois are so, you got 3 days to hunt. Then you got 3 days to hunt. It's so broke up with the muzzleloader and stuff like that. And where I'm hunting, I need a north wind. If I don't have a north wind, I can't hunt.
In terms of access, really?
It basically in terms of where the deer are coming from. Yeah. If I'm sitting on the south side of them and I got a south wind and it's just blowing up into their bed and it's done. I mean, there's no sense. So I got to hunt that deer out of the whole muzzleloader season. I think there's 4 seasons. I got to hunt him the last day of the last season.
Oh.
So I spent $350 on a tag and got to hunt one night, and I shot him that night. So it was the last night of the season. So, wow. But if I would have went in there and hunted him during the earlier seasons just to get out and hunt, I would never ever seen him. He'd have blown out and quit coming in and everything else. So,
and what was he aged at?
5.5.
5.5, yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, he could have. I mean, do you think he had the potential to get? I mean, he probably wouldn't have hit a 200 mark at 5.5, but
he actually had a bigger frame at 4.5.
Oh yeah.
He grew a bunch of junk at 5.5. Who knows what they're gonna do down there? I mean, the one that was found dead down there that was 252. That deer was basically gross boon at 2.5 years old.
Wow.
I mean, he was at 2.5 years old. He was 14 inches wide, 17 points.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just an absolute. Just a freak.
We had one like that. Oh my gosh, how many years ago was that now? It doesn't feel like it was that long. It was probably about 6 years ago, though. On our property, we had two big bucks that I was after, and it was Paul Molitor and Robin Young. I don't normally name bucks like anything like crazy like that, but Molitor and Young. And this one was Molitor. He was he was a split brow 13 point in that, and he ended up getting taken on opening morning of gun season by another guy who at the time was only gun hunting on our lease. And I knew where he was, and I knew that he was going to get taken. I was hunting as close as I could get during archery season, and I heard the shot at 7:30 in the morning from down in the swamp. Because he covers the whole swamp now, and this guy is a longtime friend in that. He's had the lease. We've been on it for like over 20 years. He's been on it even longer than that. So he's kind of his spot, and it's the only way you can really hunt this spot is with gun. And that you can hunt the fringes, but you got to be really careful again with the wind and the thermals and stuff because it's just big ridges around this bowl of a swamp. And I had multiple encounters with him. Nothing closer than 80 yards. And when I heard the shot, I knew. And then like 10 minutes later, shot a big one. I get the text. I'm like, split brows. I don't know. I haven't even gotten over there to him yet. 20 minutes later, get the picture. I'm like, that's Mahler. Now, when we got back to camp later on that day and I saw him, I'm like, I knew it. It was him in that, but he was 2.5 years old. Only 2.5. I mean, I shot a doe that day that dwarfed this buck. Like the body on this doe was way bigger than this buck. I'm like, can you imagine? Now, don't get me wrong. Like this, I probably would have taken him too, and I had plans on it. And even in my encounters in that with him at 80 yards, like he looked, you know, you're so fixated on the rack and that I wasn't even necessarily super hyper focused on the size of the body. But I'm like, man, could you imagine what he'd be in like 2 more years even? You know, even 1 more at 3.5. But
we have one down there. We have had, I don't know if he's still there or not, but we had one down there this last year that's going to be an absolute superstar. And me and Matt had talked, because me and Matt hunted down there a couple times, and he says, I'll tell you what, if that deer comes by, me and you are going to be probably wrestling each other, because I'll be.
He told me not to shoot him, and I'm like, Mike, I don't know if I can not shoot him. And we agreed he was 3.5, and he's got to be in the 170s.
He's big.
Got to be in mid 170s, and yeah, he was 1 day late, because 1 day. I mean, yeah, I sat 2 days straight for him. Yeah. And then the third day, I didn't sit there, and he came through.
And this was when he was 3.5, though. This was this last year.
Yeah, this is last year.
Yeah, he's a superstar. I mean,
would you have shot him at 3.5?
If I would have been with?
No. If he wasn't sitting with me, we'd probably gotten a fist fight on the ground. But no. If Mike says no, I wouldn't have done it. So, no, I wouldn't.
So, with that being said, you wouldn't know. I would have. I mean, 170 inch. Yeah, all day, every day. Like, but that's the difference, right? I mean, if you want to shoot really big bucks, and I went through a period of time where, like, I went on a drought because I was passing, you know, all sorts of 2.5 and 3.5 year olds for over 4 years. And I just finally got to the point where I'm like, I was getting frustrated. I was self-filming too. I was getting footage of the bucks and stuff. And I was just kind of like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm not happy with passing these. I was thinking, because the next year I wouldn't see that buck again. And that was the issue. You know, now we're talking hunting a property that's like 150 some acres, and that with prime hunting all the way around too. I'm like, this is just really, really, really hard to do. And I was getting turned off. I mean, not to the extent of like, I don't want to hunt anymore, but I was getting frustrated, and I didn't like that feeling that I was having anymore. I'm like, I just want to start shooting deer again.
Right.
And that. So I started shooting 3.5 year olds and that, but also knowing at the same time that there was also other 3.5 year olds, really nice 3.5 year olds that my buddy and I weren't shooting. That, you know, Mike, who's on my team and on the lease, and that we're like, there's plenty of other ones,
right?
And we're letting them go, but then we're not seeing them, and we're not getting them on camera. Even like, where are these bucks going?
Right.
And like, at what point do you, like, you know, keep passing on deer?
Right.
I know it's that you have to kind of it's that bridge. It's that mind fuck, so to speak.
Oh, you're 100% right.
So like, let these deer go for that potential. And that's what it is, for that potential. Yeah. Because it's not a guarantee that buck will be back. There's not a guarantee that the neighbor isn't going to shoot it. There's not a guarantee that CWD, EHD, car, you know, all these different things, and abscess, and the coyotes get to it. You know, I mean, but if you don't get past that, you're not, you know.
Yeah, well, if you kill them, that's guarantee is not going to make it.
Like I said, that big 11 pointer that we found, you know, from 3 years ago, we just found last weekend shed hunting. I was telling you guys during the break. Yeah. And that he's not going to be any bigger next year.
Right. No, he's
because he's been dead for 3 years.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy.
But anyways, so all right, so that was you said it was 178?
Yep.
Yeah. And then, all right, so let's move on from there then. What, you know, how did things kind of progress? Luke, if you could pull up a few more pictures, maybe we can just pinpoint one here.
That was my first.
That was the first.
That was my first. That's the 180. Yep. That was Richland County. Okay. And that deer was actually, I hunted him for a couple years, and he was just a smart deer. I leased the property, and it was leased prior to me and stuff like that. And they had told me about this big deer that, you know, they'd been after and stuff like that. And It took me having to cut a trail all the way up the north side of this property, because every single time I'd go into this property, every single time anybody went into this property, it was up the logging road. And that buck bedded right at the top of the hill, at the top of the logging road, and would wait for people to come in, because that's where every single person came into this property at, and he was gone. And I didn't really know it was him. I was jumping deer going in. I didn't know it was him at first. And then the one morning I went in and I could smell it was just so musty and old buck smelling and stuff like that. And I knew it had to have been him, So I cut a trail all the way up the property line to come in from the back side of this place. And after I did that, I shot him that fall. And he never showed up till November 11th every single year.
Okay.
So he was only there for a short period of time. And I thought, we actually went over there to set up for gun hunting. And I pulled a card. It was pre-cell camera. I pulled a card and he was on it.
Okay.
So I had already cut that trail in. I went up there and I shot him the next day.
So do you think he didn't show up until that time because of the pressure on the property?
I just think there was does that he knew that were in that property that every single year they came in, because it seemed I never had any pictures of him.
So he wasn't getting bumped off.
Nope.
Earlier.
Nope. It was just he just
showed up beginning of November, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy how them deer are like that.
Right.
Light switches.
And it's crazy too how sometimes they can, they'll just pick one small little portion of even a large property. Yep. They'll truncate it down to a few acres for short periods of time.
Right.
Where they're just kind of close to those doe bedding areas and then just constantly scent checking, and they're not really moving far away, when they know from past experience or whatever that this is where the does are and and this is the time frame and things like that. I think that's all a big thing. Luke, did you have some comment there?
Yeah, Elijah said he agrees with Matty Ice. 100%. You're not going to see him if you shoot him.
That's. And Elijah's. I know Elijah and the properties and stuff that he hunts, and they've killed some really nice bucks and stuff over there as well too. And that's 100%. If you shoot them, you're not going to see what the potential is.
The game's over. That's it. You got to make that choice.
Yeah, and that's a tough choice, and that's a personal choice. I mean, that's up to you. You can look at bucks I've killed up here and that. Yeah, they had other potential to get bigger in that, but I was super stoked with all these guys too, So, so that one he just pulled up, that was the first one. In that picture before that was the muzzle, or was that after that?
That was a couple years after that.
Okay, and that was this last year, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what a deer! What a deer!
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about that.
That deer.
Are you allowed to?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That deer. I had pictures of him right from Velvet. I mean, he was one of the ones that goes straight out.
Yeah.
I didn't know what deer he was at first until after I shot him and stuff like that, seen the hole in the ear. But he was a deer that he lived in the big food plot. Me and Matt put a giant food plot down in the middle of this swamp, and we've never been able to put plots basically in this property to this extent. It's always been throw a little bit of throw and grow out here and there and stuff like that, where you can, where stuff ain't growing. And this last year we actually went down there. Matt had his Bobcat in there, and we ripped out willows and
that's where him and I mesh good together that way. I mean, he's he got the ideas, and we just
so we got down in there.
This is a lease property?
No, this is my family property.
Family property.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Wife's family. So yeah, we got down in there and just made just a beautiful plot. And I, with the drought, everything else, this plot I was just going through my trail cameras, and I think from the time he worked it up until we actually established a food plot in, August, say when the Nebraskas are up, over knee high and stuff like that, I think I was probably down there 20 times doing something, whether it was putting nitrogen down, spraying, I did so much work in that plot.
Obsessed about it.
Just to...
you had to make sure
I was down there every other week just to make sure, because there's so many deer down there that I needed every single bit of food that I could possibly have to make it, you know? And so we plant this giant plot, and this buck was in there religiously, like every night. And, you know, after dark and stuff like that, every single night. And I'm like, you know,
he was holding off on a buck from last year. You know,
I kept telling him, I says, I can't shoot this deer yet. You know, it's October. I says, I can't shoot this deer yet.
He wasn't going to kill him.
So this deer,
he wasn't going to.
This deer ends up moving to, we drove his tractor double all the way around the edge of this cornfield, and there's, you know, we're getting ripped off the tractor because we're in between the tractor and the
August,
woods and the corn.
You know, the corn's 12 feet tall, and
we're getting ripped off the tractor. We go over there. It's so dusty that he drops the tiller down, and it was just like concrete, and it just turned to dust, powder.
Couldn't see.
I seeded this little spot in between two cornfields and a fence line, and I'm like, this is going to be like when the corn's standing, this is going to be the perfect kill plot back in here. Not very big, maybe a quarter acre total between the two sides. And I'm like, it's going to be a great spot.
Something to keep them from going into the corn right away.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
little staging plot.
Yeah, sure. I planted a bunch of turnips and radishes and stuff like that in there. The drought just didn't let it go. So I went down there just before rain and just went crazy with cereal rye. And because I just needed some greens back in there. Mm-hmm. And this buck found that stuff, and that turned into his spot.
It was like he was really only one of the only deer in it.
The only mature deer in there, and it was he was there and daylight, you know, daylight, and in the morning, right? Yep, and in the morning, you know, he'd be in there at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, so I knew he was close. So we had it set up to where he was going to come down and film me. We were going to go hunt this deer, and I'm like, God, because I knew I was going to kill him. I'm like, every excuse is going through my mind. I'm like, you know what? Oh, I'm like, my kid has this going on tonight, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get away. And, you know, this is going on. So I wasn't ready to be done. And I had so many other bucks from late last season, you know, during January that were still alive, like 160s, 170s that were going to be absolute slammers this year. Not that he ain't, but, you know, it was one of those things. I was waiting for them to show. I'm like, I can't tag out this early because
he called it off like 2 or 3 times.
So I screwed up.
He did.
I screwed up in Northern Illinois when I was going for that 250. I screwed up and shot a 164.
Yeah.
Thinking.
How many guys say that?
I
screwed up.
Thinking
it's a hard one to hunt with.
So thinking that I had another buck tag.
Yeah.
Because if you're an Illinois resident, you can shoot 2 bucks with a bow.
Right.
Because you can weapon down. Well, if you're non-resident, you can't weapon down. I didn't know that. So I filled my tag and didn't get to hunt that 250 the rest of that year, and then he was found that year dead.
So it's one
or 250.
It's one buck only.
It's 1 buck only with a bow and one with a gun.
If you get a rifle or a shotgun tag or muzzleloader.
Did you try hunting him shotgun or muzzleloader?
But he was already dead.
Oh, he was.
He ended up getting he locked up with a 160, a 252 and a 160 locked up dead.
Oh, that's
so I hunted a dead deer all gun season that year.
And you didn't even know it.
And didn't even know it.
When did you find out?
It was Super Bowl weekend of that. So it'd been,
well, it's a season.
Yeah, February, whatever.
Yeah. How did you find out?
A buddy of mine found him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, that's brutal.
Brutal. So Matt.
So this buck was in Wisconsin?
No, Illinois.
This one's Illinois.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Matt, you know, I get the go ahead to go. Finally, I had he's saying we got to go down there.
You didn't want to go because of the rain again.
Well, and then it was raining. Like, I'm like, it's raining, probably hold off, I knew that deer was coming in that night. So I said, all right, let's go. So he meets me at my house. We drive down to the in-laws. And do we have the e-bikes?
No, we didn't bring them.
No e-bikes yet. So we ended up having to park the truck where I didn't want to park the truck. We sneaked down in there in the rain, windy as can be. First time I've been in the stand all year. Jump up in there.
And what was this date?
Illinois.
No, what was the date?
Oh, was it October? Between the 18th and the 20th, somewhere around there.
So
Yeah.
mid-October.
Mid-October.
Yeah, mid-October. Yeah.
Which this year was actually pretty good for a lot of guys.
That was
There was a
awesome.
lot of bucks.
It was
killed,
really-
like around that weekend.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. So we get up there and it's windy as can be. It just kind of stopped raining, and
I had to hang a set.
he had to hang a set. We're breaking branches.
35 feet up in a black walnut tree.
Yeah.
So I'm up there sawing
Just a
stuff
little
away, knowing, I'm like, knowing we're going to kill a booner. And it's like I'm watching my watch, in the rain. And then I'm looking at, weather bug, knowing it's going to quit raining. And I keep telling Mike, I'm like, as soon as this rain stops, he's going to come in this spot.
Right.
It was like,
I mean, I was standing up. We weren't even we just got stuff cut and everything else, and the wind totally quits.
Yeah.
And we're like, huh.
it just stopped. Like,
And went
looked at
dead
each other.
quiet. It went from us making a bunch of noise, breaking branches, getting everything ready so he could actually see out to where I told him, I said, the deer is going to stand right there next to
crazy.
that laid down piece of corn right there. I said,
piece of
that's,
corn.
and I'm sitting there talking to Matt, and I just looked over my shoulder. I said, there he is. And it was just like that. I turned my Tacticams on. I hit my button, turned all the cameras on and stuff like that, and grabbed my bow, and I sat there staring at him.
We sat there for an uncomfortably amount of. I'm telling you, we sat there. I don't know how long it was. It was How long was it?
It was a long time.
Like 13
I'm
minutes.
staring
That's
at this.
crazy.
I'm staring at him, and I got my bow like this.
And I'm like, Mike, I'm like, I'm like going through all the scenarios in my head, and it's his story. I don't want to tell it, but it's like I saw every single time that deer was in the plot, I got to see it too.
Yeah.
So it's not like I knew what happened, and the deer would come, he'd eat, he wouldn't travel far. It's just like a big buck would do. Maybe take 3-4 steps, and he would just eat, and then like that, he'd pick his head up and he'd walk into the corn. And I'm like, what happens if he does that, Mike? I'm like, he's 24 yards, right?
And I looked over at him. I says,
I'm like,
I gotta shoot.
yards.
I gotta shoot that deer, don't I? I got it. I mean, I knew he had good mass. I didn't know he had the mass that he has, but I just knew he was a mature deer.
Yeah,
I mean, he was the most mature deer I had on camera.
Yeah.
And
pull that picture back up.
He was a good 10 or 15 inches bigger than I thought he was. It's probably, he's
in between
next
his
to a monster
in between
can.
his G2 and G3, that's where your fingers are. I mean, it's
the deer's, it's huge.
Around
It's
his bases,
really
when
big.
they talk about beer can bases, I mean, his bases are the size of beer cans. I mean, he's way bigger than what I actually thought he was. But
All right, so 13 minutes goes by.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be crafty with the A7 III up there.
Yeah.
But he's just standing there eating. So I'm just zoomed in on the deer.
and I just said,
How was the footage? Everything.
Oh, it's crystal
Just
clear
like
4K.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
Well, that's why I said I know this will be on an episode of Chase Nation.
yeah.
But that's why I said, well, can we talk?
oh
about
yeah,
it?
oh yeah,
All right, so
yeah.
13
So
minutes.
basically,
Finally,
I decided, it was, and the thing is, I wasn't even really jacked up because I'm like, God, this is it. I'm done. I am not going to be able to carry my boat or in the rut.
Yeah.
In Illinois, I'm not, and I was just, all this is going through my head, and I just wasn't. So I just, I drew the bow back and I set it on him, and he had his leg kind of back, and I told you earlier about how I'm so scared of these shoulders, with these big deer, and I'm back to shooting I shoot a Grim Reaper now, with the chisel tip and stuff like that, which I feel a little bit more
that's what
comfortable
I
with
shoot.
that
Yeah.
than I did with the Rages.
talk about a paint job. Those things, man.
And that's kind of what it did too. I mean, I hit him, I laid off that shoulder, but I actually hit probably 6-8 inches back from where I actually wanted to hit him at, even if I would have went behind the shoulder. So I end up, liver gut basically.
Yeah.
And when he actually, we didn't notice it at first, but when he went away and was going away, I mean, he had 2 feet of innards basically hanging out his exit side.
Sure.
And, you know, we knew he was going to die. We just didn't know how quick, when, stuff like that.
Yeah, liver shot. I mean, gut shot. Though it's a dead deer. It's just a matter of now the next step. Play your cards right.
Right.
For the recovery. You know, you'll trust me. I went through that a couple years ago too. I think I told you that story already before as well, and it took me days to find it. And that's after having a dog. Pure bloodhound and stuff, but you know, and then I ended up finding them on my own.
Right.
Now the meat, you know, 65 degree days and stuff. The meat was gone, but I recovered the buck at least.
Our meat was gone as well. I mean, the coyote. Oh yeah, the coyote
rib cage looked clean.
It was.
It
was ridiculous what them coyotes did to that deer,
and how quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
How long was the recovery?
He only went basically 100. Maybe 120 yards. He basically went from where we shot him directly to his bed that he stepped out of because he had a bunch of fresh rubbings in his antler.
Yep.
And that bed that basically his last bed before I'm assuming the coyotes probably kicked him out of that bed.
Yeah.
We probably would have found him in that bed, but I think the coyotes probably booted him out of there, took him over into a cornfield and kind of worked him down the cornfield, and then they ended up, whether he was alive or dead, but I'm assuming he was probably a little bit alive. But it couldn't have been a good deal. But you know, one of those things to where if a person, not to bring the drone thing up again, but if I would have had a drone
at that moment,
I would have been out there that night. You know, half hour, 45 minutes after dark.
Every half hour,
I would have flown that drone up. I would have known exactly where that deer was, and I would have either went out there and maybe took a coat or something and kind of put maybe a coat over here and a coat over here just to get a little bit of my scent out there.
Yeah, to keep the coyotes
to maybe keep the coyotes at bay a little bit until the deer could expire.
Yeah.
But I mean, hindsight's 20/20. But that's another thing where that drone would have been just. We would have known. We basically could have flown it from my father-in-law's house, not even left the driveway, and you know, there he is laying right there. Let's just wait for him to, you know.
Yeah.
It's all you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, but
wait for him to expire and then get out there before the coyotes do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so the deer was bigger than I thought he was.
Yeah.
Looking forward to watching that episode.
Yeah. The deer's he's a hammer.
Everything about that.
What did he score?
176, I think, is what he was.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, today, what is your what's your largest buck today?
193.
193.
And that was the same year that I shot it's actually the one that you got on the on the one in the swamp, or you can tell it's kind of down the river bottom-ish.
Look, if you want
the first one that you had on for
let's see.
Yeah, and don't be fooled here with Mike either. And I don't want to toot his horn, but the guy hunts. He hunts like an animal. He puts his time in. There's no
more,
just,
Luke.
Yeah, there's no just getting lucky with Mike. I mean,
keep going.
Every single second he's after it.
Keep going. That one.
There. Yep.
And that one scored what?
193.
193.
I actually scored him myself at exactly 200 inches. But he came back at 193.
Yeah. All right. Luke, you can go ahead and drop that back down then. Well, tell us about that one.
That one was basically he showed up. I hunted hard that year, and I mean, I was on a lot of different deer. I didn't even really know he was around. I went down, checked the camera. He was on it. I went down.
Same property?
Yep, same property. Went down the next morning. First deer that came in was him. I looked up and I think it was the web on the one side or something like that, or the inline point on the one side. And I grunted at him once and he didn't respond, and I snort wheezed at him and he turned and started circling all the way around me, and I think I shot him at like 24 yards.
What, and when was this?
That was first part of November, so right around November 8th, 9th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what year was that?
17.
Okay.
Yep.
That's So how'd you feel about putting your hands on something pushing 200 inches?
He was, it was something else. I mean,
Surreal,
that
sure.
180, I mean, just the frame on that 180 and the mass on it and stuff like that is just and then, a couple years later to shoot that one, it was like, all right, now the frame is bigger yet.
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, the pictures don't really do that deer justice until you actually get up and, and touch him and hold him. And I mean, he's a heck of a deer.
So let me ask you, what would you equate is the biggest reason for the you being able to kill these bucks as opposed to, is it just the mentality switch of not just killing anything? Is it where you're hunting? Is it the property? Is it, is it an evolution? What would you say the biggest factor is? Like, to your success with having killed so many of these big bucks like this?
The number one success reason is the fact that when the deer are there, you need to be able to drop everything. Mm-hmm. So I'm self-employed. So when a deer shows up on cell camera, if I happen to be working,
it's a Tuesday.
It's over. Yeah. Work is over until either that deer is no longer showing up or whatever. I mean, that's been the biggest thing with all of it. I mean, being able to put food plots in, being able to, every part of it comes down to me just having the ability.
I agree with that.
The wife to let me do and leave, and make arrangements with the kids and stuff like that to where I can go. I mean, that's I would say 90% of it. It can't be all land because, I got Richland County, I got, Winnebago County, stuff like that. I've been able to kill, usually the biggest buck on the property, no matter what property I've hunted. So it's not necessarily the property, it's just the me being able to be there when I have to be there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, because that's a good point, because you said you've been able to kill the biggest buck on those properties in that, and you equate that to just being able to be there when you should be there.
Right.
Not waiting. Well, boy, he showed up on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. I'll get there Friday after work.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just it.
Because he could be gone.
Yeah.
If somebody said to me, plan a rutcation and stuff like that, to where, okay, I got 8 days to hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen the way, if I would have waited, if I wouldn't have shot that deer this last year in October and I would have waited, none of my big bucks from last year showed up this year.
Oh, no. Huh?
No. So I shot the biggest buck on the property, but I just happened to do it in October this year. And I usually don't hunt till the end of October.
You're welcome.
I was just going to say a big high five.
Yeah.
Big high five on that.
Just because I don't hunt early season, just because I don't want to be done.
Oh,
that's why I always
that.
wait. It's the last week in October. Mm-hmm. I just wait. Just because it's like, it ain't like I don't see deer. It ain't like I don't have them on camera and stuff like that. It's like, I'm not ready to be done yet.
I know.
And then I lost some leases in Wisconsin. So my lease over in Richland County and stuff like that I lost that. The other place got sold. Some guy from he bought it. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff going on that property as well, because that property is
coming there.
He's turning that thing into what I wanted to turn it into when I just leased it.
Sure.
But I only had the availability to do just small food plots. He's got the whole thing now. So that place is going to be insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully understand the not wanting to be done and that, because I'm much the same. I love hunting the rut.
Yes.
I love the idea of not knowing what could happen from one next. For a random buck that you have not had on camera to all of a sudden show up. Right. That excitement is really, really, really fun. I've been in that situation in September already, where I've been on some nice bucks in that. Got my ass chewed out for just getting footage in that and not shooting a buck within 30 yards, nice big 10-pointers and stuff. And that because I knew that, there was other bucks, that I was after. I've lived to regret that though too,
Oh yeah.
More times than not, where I've even shot bucks smaller than bucks that I passed on in early season because I didn't want my season to end in that. Or like, all right, well, I'm going to go to Ohio on that, but I'm going to be doing a DIY on public land, or going here, going there. Like, you don't know what you're going to get into in that.
Right.
Whereas at least with you got the properties in Wisconsin and Illinois where you got cameras running and stuff like that. I mean, that does kind of open it up. But I guess I didn't realize that you couldn't, as a non-resident in Illinois. I just figured it was the same deal that you could do 2 with the bow, but it's one with the bow and one with the gun, whether it be shotgun or muzzleloader.
Yep.
But if you're a resident, you can take them both with archery
weapon down.
equipment.
Yep. Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah. If
I
you're
mean,
lucky,
you would think like why couldn't you weapon down with both of them? Like
It's just a benefit of being an Illinois resident.
the only benefit.
I guess. I don't. Is it a benefit though? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
I guess because you're going to truncate your time, your seasons. They're obviously the gun seasons and that are going to be as long as archery. Archery season is going to be longer, so you'd have more opportunity, I guess, in that aspect. I get it, but what of all your hunts, what would you say is your most memorable? And it can't be one of the ones you've already talked about.
Actually, probably the most memorable one was last year's.
I just told you can't pick
the year before last.
Oh, the year before last.
The year before last.
Okay.
I shot that doe with the bow.
Yep.
And then I ended up having to go back to crossbow. And I was hunting. Well, I was hunting a couple of nice bucks, all season. And then this one buck showed up on one of the leases that I hadn't stepped foot in the whole year.
Was that the Clean 8 episode?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And that deer, what I thought was that deer, I just got one picture of it, and the video, obviously you had to wait for the video to come through and stuff like that, and there was just a main beam coming around the side of a tree. And I'm like, and I was getting ready to go hunting that morning, and I'm like, this has got to be a sign that I need to go there. Mm-hmm. So I went in, and I hadn't hunted there all year, and my trail wasn't cut in the north side of the property because I usually come in from the north side, cut into the center of the woods. It's all woods and then a picked bean field out front. So I come in from the backside. The deer are always out in the picked beans. They move in through. And so I did that. I actually turned around out in the front, and I seen a bunch of deer when I was turning around to go park. I seen a bunch of deer out front. So I came in the backside and got up in there, and right at daylight, I heard the loudest buck growl that I'd never really heard a lot of buck growls in the woods, but this one was just the loudest, deepest growl that
when you hear it, you know it.
Yeah, you hear it, you know it. I'm like, that's a mature deer. Mm-hmm. And then it was just all hell broke loose, and there was bucks chasing does up the edge of the field, back and forth. And this is just as the sun is coming up. And next thing you know, they kind of worked their way into the woods. And I watched them deer from basically daylight until 4:30 in the afternoon. They'd bed down, and then a couple bucks would come through the woods. They'd go over there. The big buck would get up. He'd chase them away.
Yeah.
And this went on the whole day. And there was 2 or 3 times to where he was chasing the other bucks away, and he was coming around and gonna, he was basically in range because I had the crossbow then. It was like 40 yards. Didn't know it was 40 yards because I couldn't range and stuff like that. But he was in range, but there were so many times that deer came in, and it was like that close.
Sure.
Boom, come in that close. So I was on edge so many different times with that deer that it was like, just everything that went on that day, watching him make rubs and watching him scrape and watching him dog that doe through the woods, and just everything about that hunt was just like what you watch on TV.
Yeah.
And it's just, everything was just perfect. I mean,
all day long,
the whole day. I mean, and I'm texting Matt and I'm texting Sam back and forth the whole day long, and I'm giving them play by play, on how this is going, and I'm taking pictures of the deer standing out there, and just every single part about it. and I was doing everything in my power. You know, I was grunting and I was snort wheezing and I was doing the tippy can call thingy and everything. Absolutely no reason that deer should have came to me. It was getting towards dark, and all these deer are walking out towards the picked field to eat. And I'm like, that's it. You know, they're heading out too. You know, everything's heading out to the field. You know, there's no reason for them to come to the middle of the woods.
Back towards you, yeah.
It wasn't 10 minutes later, here she come. And I said, you know, and you can hear
the opposite direction of all the other deer.
Yeah, you can hear it lightly on the video. I'm like, there's no way this is happening right now. You know, I mean, she came directly to me, whether she heard the can call earlier and thought, hey, maybe there's a younger deer over there or something that wants to hang. No idea. Yeah. And just like they do in the rut, he was every single footstep she took, he was right behind her. And but that hunt just because it was just 11 hours of being on edge,
right?
You know, and he wasn't the biggest deer by no means that year that I was after. Yeah, I mean, I was after much bigger deer, and I actually passed, and Sam yelled at me. I had a beautiful 10-pointer that I videotaped him drinking out of a creek, and the reflection of this deer in the creek, rack, everything else, drinking the ripples in the water, you know, and Sam's looking at it like, that's like the most beautiful video and it's standing there broadside at 35 yards on my birthday, and I passed him up. Yeah. He was probably 145-inch 10-pointer, but just your average deer, you know, and I'm like, that was
his average deer.
And I'm like, you know,
I don't know who he was talking to there.
Everything about it was awesome, but I ended up shooting a smaller deer, but the hunt was just, everything about that hunt had me on edge and got me jacked up the whole day, and it was just awesome.
Yeah, I've 100% been there, done that too, where, you know, the buck I ended up killing ended up being smaller than other bucks I passed up, but something in that moment, like the way the hunt shook out, the way the deer reacted to, you know, a grunt or snort wheeze or was interacting with other deer and that, and those are like far more rewarding in terms of like, you know, trying to like reliving that in your head of how that whole thing played out, where it's just like, you know, a buck just came walking by in there, and you were kind of maybe borderline on it, and you end up shooting something smaller. But man, in that, the way it played out was so much more intense.
Oh yeah, if you get to hunt one and actually hunt one, oh man.
Well, actually have to change your SD card and change your battery, just because you got so much footage of all this stuff going on.
Oh, you had a camera on it.
Was
catching all of that
every
too.
Single bit of it was.
Well, and it's kind of, I would say it's a little bit on the rare side too, to be that close to a bedded doe in heat with the buck sitting there tending the whole time.
Yep.
Where you get to witness that. And then also get to witness the fact of how much time that buck will spend where that doe goes. I mean, you'll get the chasing and things like that. And I think for the most part, if you spend enough time out there, you will experience it. But it's not every year you hunt the rut, you're going to see this where this buck is just sitting there tending this one doe, chasing every other buck that even comes remotely close to sniffing her. You know, that's good so stuff. How fast did that day feel like it did? Did it feel like it dragged on, or did it like
I mean, it seemed like it just flew by.
It just kind of flew by.
I don't think I sat the whole day.
Yeah.
I mean, I stood the whole time because you just didn't know when it was going to happen.
And then when it was time, it was just like a total adrenaline dump after that.
Yep. And then that night the video comes through and I look at it, and of course the one that I shot wasn't the big one that I went in there after that morning, but hindsight's 20/20, I guess.
And you self-filmed that all by yourself too.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember catching that episode.
Yeah. That was a good one. That was a fun hunt.
Yeah. How did your last season go here?
This last year?
Yeah.
Whew. Pretty fine,
Amazing.
I guess.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah.
Well, tell us about it.
Well, I obviously hunted Illinois pretty hard. and didn't end up getting it done down there. We had some good encounters, Mike and I, and it was fun. I sandbagged, and I'll use that term, I guess. I sandbagged Wisconsin archery season pretty hard. Yeah. And I did last year too. I hunt Missouri every year, have been for 15 years. And Missouri is a little harder for me to get down and get food and really take care of the any plots we have or inventory deer. So I like to gear up all my Wisconsin stuff for late season. And then it's like I get to hunt, from September 15th through January. Right. And then I get to late season is like my jam. I love like pinning a deer down, figuring them out to the exact minute and going in and killing them late season. So that's kind of my mindset. I didn't hunt Wisconsin a lot during the rut. Left it alone, and I probably should have pursued it a little harder because I did not kill one with my bow in Wisconsin. Okay. I fought it right to the very end. I didn't get it done, but I did kill a good 4.5 in Wisconsin with my muzzleloader. Nice. During muzzleloader season on one of my farms in Jefferson County. He was a deer that was around early and completely disappeared. Didn't see him again all the way through the rut. December, didn't see him. Or no, it was in December. In December is when I did see him. So he came in. When was that? Was it the first couple days of muzzleloader? I think so.
I think it was.
It was like Wednesday of the muzzleloader season. And he was in there that night. And that's like the one thing where Mike was saying about being flexible.
To get out there.
Flexible. And that goes right down to planting your food plots, fertilizing them, tree stands, hanging them with the right wind or in the rain. Like if you just run that whole mentality of making sure everything is perfect if you can, and it comes together. But yeah, that deer showed up on cell camera that night, and I was like, oh my gosh, that 4.5's back. And I told Mike I'm going to go in there and kill him tonight. Like I'm just going to kill him. He's going to be in that plot. And I actually watched a Chris Brackett video about going back to brassicas. Yeah. He's like, you got 2 days. They're going to go back to brassicas. And I'm like, all right, Chris. And then I'm like, yeah, they're going to go back to brassicas. All right. So I'm going to go kill him.
And you're talking about like his new podcast that he just started?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually don't even know if it was a podcast or just a little clip I seen maybe on his Facebook. I didn't really listen to his podcast, but sure. But yeah, anyway, Mike ended up calling me. I was in the blind, and I was just sitting up there with my muzzleloader hanging out, and he called me, and I was chatting with him and his 2 girls on the phone, and I had him on speakerphone on my backpack, and I'm just up there talking, and I'm like, oh my God, Mike. Like he's coming through the cattails. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, he's coming right now. I'm like, hold on. I'm like, don't say anything. So he's like trying to, scramble his girls. Like, be quiet, Matt's gonna shoot a big one.
So you just kept it.
I kept it on there.
That's pretty.
I kept him on there. Thing. And I videoed. So I videoed him coming through the marsh, and you'll be able to watch this hunt unravel too. But yeah, he ended up coming in perfect, and I dropped the hammer on him, and he's a stud of a deer. So
you got to listen to it.
I got to live it live,
thing, and I could talk to him like he was sitting there with me. I'm like, he's down, Mike.
That's awesome.
And his girls are laughing and stuff, and that was really good. So yeah, that which is for me, it's harder to kill a big one during the gun season or muzzleloader in Wisconsin than it is for archery. Yeah. The year before, I hunted a big one in archery. Wisconsin and got it done, and I hunted him 23 days in a row, sub-zero temperatures, and ended up making it happen.
Sure.
But so I had Cody over my shoulder in Missouri, and I shot one of my biggest Missouri archery deer this year.
Oh, awesome!
With Cody over my shoulder, just a phenomenal hunt. Mike was there for the recovery, and it was awesome. And then I guess fast forward a week and a half, just there's so much stuff that happened down there this year. It was just incredible. But Mike was over my shoulder when I shot my Missouri buck too.
Oh,
this year.
Awesome.
So
gun, gun one
with the gun, yeah, with the gun, which that's a whole thing. But yeah, so Cody shot a big one on on my neighboring lease the night before opening season of rifle.
We went down there the day ahead of time to bow hunt because we both had bow tags still.
Okay, so they went down early and were bow hunting, and Cody put an arrow in just a stud of an 8-pointer, and it jumped the fence. I have 2 border farm leases in Missouri, so the north fence line is Iowa, and these leases are right next to each other, and they are. I've hunted all over the Midwest, and the deer numbers down where I'm at are ridiculous. There's a lot of deer, and so Cody shoots this deer. It jumps into the other lease, which is the lease that I myself can only hunt. And I was like, hey, tomorrow's opening day at rifle. I'm like, Cody, I just was like, it's up to you, man. You got to go in there. But we watched the footage, and we're like, we're gonna have to leave this deer overnight anyway. So we decided to leave him overnight. We'll rifle hunt in the morning and then look for him midday. That was what we came up with.
Okay.
So that morning, Hackett and I, Hackett did not have a rifle tag, so he was going to film me for Missouri Rifle.
Okay.
And we tromped into my back lease way back. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere back here. And we're in the stand. The sun comes up, and we were up all night watching Cody's footage, in 4K, watching the shot, replaying it back and forth.
Yeah, yeah.
And the sun come up, and like half an hour into it, here comes this big 8-pointer out of the thicket, and we're both, we're smart guys, we both like know what's going on. And that deer got up, he made a scrape, and he came broadside, and I had my AR-10 308, and we let that deer walk on camera with my gun right past us, and then
70 yards.
And then after the deer exits our line of view, then we're like, oh my God, that was Cody's buck.
I was just gonna say.
So then we go back and watch the footage, and we're like, oh no. Yeah. So then I had to listen to Cody be mad at me that it was good enough for him to shoot and it wasn't good enough for me to shoot. Even though and then I shot a smaller one. So we sat there all day long and watched bucks chase does. And then that night, I don't know what it is about Hackett, but he has this way of convincing you to shoot a deer. But he was like, I was like, what about that one, Mike? And he's like, oh, he's really tall. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, Mike says he's good,
I just said he was tall.
Yeah. I don't know.
Didn't say he was 14 inches wide and tall.
Yeah, he often says, oh, that's going to be a great camera buck. That's his line. That's a great camera. That's a great one to film. You're going to kill him. It's a great one to film. I'm like, okay. So anyway, we killed him. And I'm very fortunate. So I self-filmed the muzzleloader Wisconsin buck, and then I'd Hackett over my shoulder for the Missouri gun, and Cody over my shoulder for that. And I mean, obviously I was over Mike's shoulder for this buck this year, and it's been a wild ride. I mean, we put in, I can't tell you the hours. I mean, we had, we're over at Drexel putting in plots for Sam and Steve over there, and we were in Iowa. We got a bunch of land down there, and then we were the Missouri stuff, and Illinois and Western Wisconsin, and it's just running hard.
Yeah.
Just all year. So, yeah.
So the question is though, so whatever happened with Cody's buck then? I mean, just he survived, or
he's alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had more.
We left one cell camera down there yet today, and he was there quite often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good at least.
Yeah. So he made it. As far as we know, he's alive. Yep. Yeah, and he'll be a hammer.
He's good enough for me to shoot, but not good enough for you.
Oh, Cody gave me hell. He was actually mad at me. I was like, I didn't mean it like that, Cody. But, looking back, I was like, I didn't realize. I'll have to show you when we get off. I got the video on my phone.
All right.
You'll be like, what the hell were you thinking? And I watched the video, and I'm like, he always looks better when they're walking away.
Oh, yeah. That last little bit before they get out of sight, when they're walking away and they turn and walk away from me, it's like, that might have been a mistake.
Yeah.
But it was, again,
for
it was the opening morning. It's like, I know where I'm at. But Cody ended up killing a pretty good one down there with Hackett over his shoulder. with the rifle.
Are you saying it was good enough for Cody?
It was good enough for Cody.
It was one of those things. So that hunt of Cody's was the coolest thing ever because it's like we sat and it's like, all right, let's get down because we're going to head out of town early and stuff like that. I said, let's go over this ridge. And I said, let's sit on the ground to where we can see this valley here. And I said, let's just be idiots. And I said, make all kinds of noise and bang antlers together and roll around on the ground. Just make noise because there's so many bucks down there.
Okay.
That calling down there is like nothing. Every time you rattle, a buck is coming in. Every single time you rattle, a buck is coming in.
That's crazy.
It is nothing like you've ever seen.
Yeah. No, because I've had like zero to no luck with.
Oh
with
yeah,
rattling.
I do not rattle in Wisconsin. I don't even hardly bring them with.
It's not even. Yeah, I don't even bother. It's a pain to carry them out there.
Yeah.
Like,
so Cody starts doing this rattling, and I'm videotaping him and stuff, and I'm like, heck with it. It's like 11 o'clock in the morning. Whatever. We ain't gonna screw anything up. And all of a sudden, it's like all hell breaks loose. The freaking whole woods is like deer running at us, and I'm like. That just actually worked. And it wasn't what we thought. There was a hot doe with like 5 bucks behind her. And it's just like, they're just deer running everywhere. And he's got his gun and he's trying to figure out which one. And I'm trying to, which one's he going to shoot and all this other stuff. So they all kind of went running by. He's like, what just happened? And they went up this little valley to where we couldn't see him. All of a sudden I look out there and I see another one coming. And I threw the binoculars up quick. And I'm like, that's a good one coming. I said, you need to get up there to that tree because that little valley, if he had came up that valley, he wouldn't have got a shot. So he ran up to that tree. I ran up next to him and started videotaping and stuff like that. And as soon as it stepped into this opening, boom, he shoots him. And
that's awesome.
So, yeah, it was just one of those things. If we wouldn't have went over there just to be idiots and make a bunch of noise in the woods, we wouldn't have seen them deer.
Yeah, and that's the thing about – chasing big bucks is what I'd say in the last 3 to 5 years, what I've learned the most is the stupid stuff that you don't think about. Like he's in there right now. What am I going to do? Like literally go after him. Like that's my number one thing. If he's there or if he was just there, like the blatantly obvious stuff that I looked over the last 20 years. Honestly, it's,
yeah, I mean, I feel like there's 2 schools of thought on that. It's like what you said,
yeah.
Or there's like the over cautious, like so afraid to not bump that deer off.
That's what I was always like, always afraid.
And like it's cost me, I know, and other times I feel like it's been beneficial as well. When we were talking about Molitor there, and that like I could have pushed in a little bit harder. But I was like being kind of overly cautious now, trying to get too close, really kind of like, when you're talking like ridges and swamps, like how are the thermals going to work?
Right.
Like the wind might be doing this, but how are the thermals going to be? Do I blow this buck out of there?
It's a little trickier when you get into thermals and
yeah.
I mean, otherwise you just pretty,
But you can make yourself nuts out there though too.
Yeah,
like just
bonkers.
Sitting there worrying about it. And then you get, guys like Dan Infalt and that are just going to get after it and and just push through and just keep gridding areas in that, pushing in until you're there in that. And, and I feel like that's crazy, like on public land, like it doesn't really make a difference in terms of what's the matter, Luke?
We're at 2 hours and 2 seconds.
Oh, okay. So we're wrapping up right here?
Yeah, it's over.
It's over. Oh.
With 2 hours. I didn't know if it was going to pop up again. It did.
Oh.